Okay, so hello guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast with a new season for the spring semester of 2024, I believe, right?
Yes.
We're in the spring. That's very exciting. So I'm Ricardo. I've been your co-host for quite a while, but Terry, would you like to introduce yourself? Like, what are you doing here? You just joined the club, and what is your conversation piece? Like, what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so my name is Terry. I joined the club this semester and I'm studying neuroscience and I'm from New York. Um, yeah, I was interested in like artificial intelligence and how they can shape our world and more specifically like how they can design recommendation algorithms, not just for like videos on YouTube, but also like things that they could suggest we do on a daily basis, like decisions we make as a whole and as a species.
Interesting. Yeah, I think um, those types of ideas are pretty interesting. The whole idea of like algorithms. Some people see them as harmful. Some other people really like them. It has shaped the way that we see the world, especially when it comes to buying things, right? Like or just consuming different types of media. One of the examples is just like TikTok, right? It's
Yeah.
it's been one of these examples that has been constantly been brought to the forefront because we've had all these like different weird challenges and things that weren't particularly great
Yeah.
that have gotten like kids or just other people involved like really harmed. But at the same time, right, like this same algorithm does take us further into our hobbies or things that we really want to do and have enabled us to learn about new things, sort of ingrained ourselves a little bit better, maybe some specific creators and stuff like that. So in terms of just generally, um, what do you see in algorithms as like? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What is like your personal opinion on it, and why?
So I feel like algorithms is they're generally a good thing. Like it's kind of like a tool, right? So like computers are a tool. The way you use it makes it good or bad. Like you could use it to like hack software, and then that would be bad. And then you could use it to like do work, and that would be good. So like algorithms are like the same. So it's not like innately good or bad. It's just a tool,
Hmm.
and um, it depends on how we use it. So like if we design it so that it improves the quality of life for like humans in general, like that would be definitely be good. And I feel like that is like we should strive for technological progress. Like we shouldn't stun things just because we're afraid of the negative outcomes.
Right, because that's especially one of the things that has become sort of prevalent, right? Like
Yeah.
this idea that there will come a big bad AI that will suddenly like bring about the doom of Earth, right? Like
Yeah.
we've seen it in various types of media. One of them being the one that I think of, like Age of Ultron, right? Like Avengers: Age of Ultron, right? Ultron was this sort of artificial intelligence that had this algorithm that was designed to basically like help humanity, but it was able to access massive amounts of information and saw that hey, humans are actually like not amazing things to the environment. They tend to fight each other a lot of times, and that sort of leads to the final conclusion of like in order to protect humanity in a way you have to like enslave it. So there's definitely like very real ramifications again with the whole idea of algorithms because we've seen this before, right?
Yeah.
One big example is, for example, like used in like police, the whole fact of like facial recognition, right? If you are able to bring these like dirty data sets, if you want to think of them that way, that tend to perpetuate like specific like stereotypes that can be pretty harmful, and I think that's where the distinction sort of lies, is the fact that we can make algorithms as good as we want to, but to some degree we don't know how good our data sets are, to where we don't know if by training them or by using these different algorithms a certain way we'll end up finding a lot of like discrepancies that we really don't want, right? Like we
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily want people of like a certain race or a certain color to end up having higher rates of being convicted through some sort of like facial recognition, artificial intelligence, or something along those lines, because
Yeah.
it can happen. And we, to a degree, we're already like using this type of technology not for like judging, but just identification purposes, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you recently been to like an airport recently, like
No.
gone through security? So I'll tell this story. I think I told this story like a couple of times already in the podcast, but it's always interesting. I was coming. Oh no, I was. I'm pretty sure I was coming back from Mexico, and I was flying by plane, which is pretty common. and you know we went through like border U.S. security and everything, and it was fine. Usually they would look at our passports and then like judge with their eyes, like to see if we were the person in the passport. Like that's pretty common. But this time what they did is they had us line up in a certain way and then face a camera, and it wasn't even like a good camera. It was literally like a webcam that you can buy in like not Walmart, Amazon for like 40, 60 bucks maybe. I'm pretty sure it was like a Logitech C920. I looked into it, and the guy at the back of the computer was like, "Are you this guy?" And I'm like, "Is that your name?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, good." And he just like let us through. And I thought that was the wildest thing, right? Because I've heard in articles of like the U.S. using this technology for like identification purposes, but to see it and use it and like not necessarily like I guess if you say subject, it kind of has a bad feeling to it or like a bad taste in the mouth. But like you were a user of this technology, like they used it on you, and it was pretty interesting to see like imagine how many people this system is going through like every day, right?
Yeah.
And at least for that it's like pretty harmless because again you're just like kind of looking for similarities in a database and you're just ensuring that like you are a US citizen. Like I
Yeah.
think it's completely fine. But like for example, imagine if this technology was used in mass with just regular security cameras, right? Like that
Yeah.
can potentially be scary for undocumented immigrants and stuff like that. So there
Yeah.
is this level of like how good is artificial intelligence? How bad is it? Um, where would you personally like to see this technology going in terms of like adoptability or things that we can do with it? Because we've seen that we've used it for media, we've seen that we've used it for shopping. Is there anything that you'd like to see artificial intelligence like going into and sort of spreading its roots in?
Yeah. So like this is far, far down the line, so like probably won't happen in my lifetime. So, um, like ideally, I want it to actually make decisions for humans.
Oh, okay.
Like this is very controversial because
Hmm.
like some people believe that we should have the right to choose for ourselves,
Yeah.
but like if ideally if you make the perfect AI, and I'm like perfect, perfect,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Like Utopia perfect
the
kind of thing.
utopia perfect, they would
Right.
understand what you want and do the best for you in regards to entire humanity. And this
Hmm.
is like it's very debatable like how you define like what's best because it could have a like utilitarian perspective,
Right.
where like it would choose to say more people than like to say one person because it's just like more people like the number it's like a numbers game.
Right.
Like it maximizes the happiness, but there are like other perspectives too, like other philosophical perspectives and like how you value like human life and like what is ethically correct.
Yeah.
um so that's very debatable, but I do think there is a perfect that exists. So in that sense, would be creating like a god, and I think
Yeah.
we should strive for that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. So, for example, would you be comfortable with that? Like, let's just hypothetically say that we do have this God entity as like an artificial intelligence system,
yeah.
right? An algorithm system. Would you be completely comfortable with just taking the decisions that it chooses for you? Um,
Assuming that it's perfect, yeah, I would.
assuming that it's perfect. Okay. And so I guess in this way, because you're sort of pointing at this being as a utilitarian like mechanism, right?
Yeah,
Which doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna like take into account like your most happiness, but rather like the entireties of the planet. I'm assuming like happinesses, right? Or like how would you consider like the utilitarianism aspect of this algorithm? Like, is it gonna maximize your happiness as a person, or will it maximize like the happiness of the society?
so ideally it would, like I don't think, I'm not a utilitarianist, like I
Oh,
don't
okay,
believe
okay,
in that, like I
okay,
don't
okay,
believe you should maximize happiness as a whole.
okay.
I think you should like do what's ethically best. And
Okay.
so it would be developed so far, it would understand like the true philosophy of the universe, where it can make the
Interesting.
best decisions on that front. Like I don't think we've discovered like all the, or invented, like depends on how you define it. Like I
Uh-huh.
don't think we've defined like what all the philosophies that exist. It's kind of like we haven't defined all the mathematical principles that exist.
Right.
So
Okay.
ideally it would know everything. And in that front it would choose what is best.
Interesting. I think that's a really interesting idea to go into, particularly because I feel like this happens with any new technology or any new like idea or culture that happens. Like, if this were, let's say that this were to be a thing, I feel like there will definitely be like some either like naysayers or just people that are like confrontational towards the
Yeah.
idea of having this AI system.
Yeah.
Um, but then I guess that begs the question, right? Like this artificial intelligence would, in a way, have to be so powerful as to be very dynamic.
Hmm.
Like, if it's the same thing with like the concept of like artificial intelligence in self-driving cars. Like, if every car is a self-driving car, that makes the computation for self-driving cars easier because it knows what the predictable path is, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm the one moving all the buttons, then I
Hmm.
know what the buttons do. I
Yeah.
can control everything the way I want it to, and
Yeah.
nothing will crash. But then, for example, if some people don't partake in the usage of this hypothetical algorithm system, then it has to be mobile. Like it has to be able to be very dynamic in choosing options. Because maybe at the point where you were asking it a question or it was telling you to do something, the world was a certain way, where now somebody else act this other way, and then it has to change like its answer, right?
So are you saying like it has limited knowledge, but then once new knowledge comes in, it has to change its answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I would assume, right? Because it's the whole idea of like almost like a simulation system,
Yeah.
right? Like the idea behind why a simulation system is so hard to implement, like an accurate, is because there's so many moving parts. Like
Yeah.
we have the whole idea of like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
Where you not don't necessarily know what one little tiny movement that you do might potentially like affect things years later. It's the whole thing of like,
Yeah.
oh, if you go back in time and move one rock,
Yeah.
like a volcano erupted in like another city that it wasn't
Okay. Yeah.
supposed to erupt
Yeah.
into, right? So in that way, either like a computer system has to be smart enough to, you know, molecular level to be able to like figure out people's brain chemistry
Uh.
to know how they're gonna eventually like think, and
Yeah.
so that it can mark a path forward for you,
Yeah.
or else it has to like almost take snapshots every time something important happens and then dynamically move from there.
Uh.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question. Do
Yeah.
you think that what you choose to do tomorrow, like for example, you're choosing like to eat chocolate ice cream versus vanilla,
Uh huh.
do you think that is predetermined?
Okay. That's a good. I don't know. I've heard different arguments for, and this sort of goes into like a bit of theology or
Yeah.
like different things, right? Like the idea of like, for example, I'm Catholic. Like the idea of like an omnipresent God, like
Yeah.
all knowing God,
Yeah.
similar to your idea of like an algorithm. Um, which might be true, but I feel like most people feel like we have true freedom in that like we choose and there's no predetermined future,
Yeah.
or at the very least from what I've heard is that we have the illusion of a predetermined future. Like we don't, that's the thing, right? Because we don't know for sure, we believe that we can make the assumption that we have freedom and
Hmm.
nothing is predetermined. But what if something comes and breaks, the fourth dimension or whatever, and then all of a sudden we find out that we do have like a predetermined future, right? Like
Yeah.
things are set in stone. Like
Yeah.
maybe our perception is just an illusion all along. Maybe it is. I have no idea.
Yeah. It's very like nobody knows, and then like personally, I don't know, but I want to say that it's not predetermined.
Uh huh.
Just on the basis that like quantum mechanics exist. Like there's a
Oh, okay.
50% possibility it like flips, like the thing flips up, or like 50% possibility it flips down.
Oh,
So
okay.
based on that, the physics says there is no like set thing. There is no like if an event A happens, event B must happen.
Oh,
But then
okay.
some physicists argue that quantum mechanics is not the deepest layer of physics. They argue that there's a deeper layer, and that deeper layer is the deterministic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh man, that went through another rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know.
That's insane. Because I'm trying to think like again we kind of like go back to the idea of like a simulation, right? Like
Yeah.
when we're talking about like these different levels of either something being deterministic or not being deterministic, you can almost think of it as I'm trying to think of the word, as like various realms within a video game, right? Like for
Like
example,
different universes.
like different
Yeah,
universes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like the whole idea is that maybe there will come a future when we are able to create computers smart enough,
Hmm.
powerful enough to be able to create realities
Yeah.
in like virtual realities
Yeah.
that assimilate the actual world.
Yeah.
And like a smaller, dumber example of this is like The Sims,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't know, there was a pack or like a patch or like a mod that you could install
Yeah.
where you could have scientists, and those scientists could develop like a like artificial intelligence, and then they would know that, hey, we developed artificial intelligence that thinks it's a game, that thinks it's real life. What if we are also doing that? And so you would have these little like sim characters in like the Sims game,
Uh-huh.
basically breaking the fourth wall,
Yeah.
telling you as a user, hey, what are you doing? Which was really wild. So if you think about it, it's like almost like a god,
Yeah.
and then us being like, oh, I know you exist. Like I can see you doing things.
Alright, yeah, that's
like
kind of
kind of
funny.
breaking the fourth wall. So in that same vein, like I feel like it's kind of similar to that, right?
Yeah.
Because then maybe the deeper you go, maybe there is an infinite number of layers. The same way that there could be infinite number of dimensions or infinite possibilities of different universes, right?
Yeah.
All flipping. So you never know if it's like deterministic or if it's non-deterministic.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I feel like even just because of the fact that there is the potential to never know,
Hmm.
we could, I guess, default to the answer of like it's non-deterministic.
I don't think the fact that we like okay, I don't think we know that we don't know, you know? Like we could know sometime at one point.
Yes.
And then also even if we can never know, like it could still just be deterministic. Like you ever heard of like so there's this mathematical proof that was like there's some mathematical truth out there you can never prove. And this is a real proof. So like
Oh.
there's some truths out there that you can't prove with the logic like that exists right now. Or like
Oh.
any logic.
So there has to be like a process that has to be found to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, and then that can't be found. But then it's so true.
Right. So there's the possibility of still finding it,
Yeah.
just that it doesn't exist in our time so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. I think it's called like Gödel's something theorem. Wait, I should look it up. It's
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that makes sense now that now that I think about it, because there are certain like qualities or there are certain like rules to the world that it's not until very late in the game that we find the true mechanics behind.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea of like birds flying, right?
Yeah.
Back when we didn't have things like airplanes,
Yeah.
we just assumed people assumed that it was magic or it was some other thing until.
Yeah.
We got to the point where we were just able to get things to move really fast and
Yeah.
create enough downwards pressure to lift something off the ground.
Yeah.
But even when that happened, right, for the longest time, the physics behind a flying object weren't completely clear.
Yeah.
Like we just knew that if you had wings in a certain like place and you were moving fast enough that you would be able to catch enough air.
Yeah.
But we didn't know the exact mechanics behind it.
Hmm.
Yet the process was still
Yeah,
a thing, and
yeah,
the
yeah.
end result being something getting off the ground
Yeah.
is still real. Like it's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
true.
It's so true. Yeah.
So I in that sense, I guess you are not wrong
Yeah.
in the fact that So I guess in that case, like the better answer would be, we assume that it's deterministic.
It could be non-deterministic.
Oh god. Okay. So, oh god, what do you do? What do you do with that then?
I have no idea. Also, the theorem's called Gödel's incompleteness theorem.
Girls and completeness.
Yeah, GODL.
Interesting. Where did you learn this?
I just like YouTube rabbit hole.
YouTube rabbit hole. YouTube rabbit holes are always the best.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Also the idea of like algorithms. I think I think that's like the utopia, right? Like creating an algorithm, something that is so powerful that can at the
Yeah.
same time sort of be good.
Yeah.
But I think even to get to that point, I think it's really hard because, like it or not, like maybe until we are able to create an AI that creates more AIs or something along those lines,
Yeah.
like to a degree, I feel like there's always bias or there's always like certain things built into code that may not always be the most efficient or the greatest. So even just getting to that point might be hard.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of like feasibility of like an actual like
Yeah.
all-knowing AI.
Yeah, so based on that, like, so I was thinking about this like in the shower or something. And I was like, okay, this is so far into the future, it's kind of meaningless to think about it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you might as well just try to live your life right now and do the best with what you can instead of like hoping for this thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another thing, right? like it or not, if we imagine this world in where everybody is able to everybody like gets their decisions from an artificial intelligence system, an algorithm system, I guess in a way that just kind of makes us like, it's kind of funny to say this, but like that just kind of makes us like sheep in that
Hmm.
case. Like we're just like aimlessly wandering around
Aren't we already sheep?
to a degree, but at the very least, like I guess you could argue that at the very least the illusion of of
You could have the illusion even under the AI.
but I feel like
What if we're
it's
already under an AI? What if the world is deterministic?
that's the thing though, because we don't know for sure, that at the very least gives us a sense of freedom,
Yeah,
even if it's a false sense of freedom. And I think that's the whole like psychology of things, right?
yeah,
um because if it's the same thing with like death, right? and,
yeah,
and I think about this a lot. I am like hopelessly scared of death, right?
yeah.
I'm scared of death, but sometimes you just have to think about the fact that it doesn't really matter. Like
Uh huh.
thinking about death is scary, and it's innate nature to think about death.
Yeah,
But at the same time, thinking too much about it doesn't produce any results.
yeah,
If that makes sense. And if anything, right, like you could worry about dying and you can take the steps to avoid it as much as possible. But then something happens and you're dead. Like there's nothing you can change about it. So at the very least, like the illusion that it doesn't exist, right? Like taking your mind off of things, sort of provides a certain peace.
hmm,
Um, and I feel like in that same way, you could argue that not knowing if the future or if the world is deterministic, even if in a falsehood, it gives you a certain breadth of freedom or peace,
yeah.
right?
That like you have some sense of control.
That you have some sense of
Yeah,
control. Because that's the thing, right? Like even even if people don't think that the future is deterministic, every day we see this. Like people are fighting for control, right?
yeah,
Like there are people that have certain issues. There are like world leaders that are, you know, in over their heads, that are trying to keep as much power as possible, and that's like one of the things that sort of makes the world go round. It's the fact that like people want to be sure of things, right? Like we want to take the safe route because that allows us to control the outcome of things. It's the reason why you do certain things, right? Because you know you can get to a certain outcome. And that in a little bit like provides peace because you're the one that's doing things. Like nobody likes being told what to do without any reasoning or meaning,
yeah,
right? It's scary. It's scary. Like, and I feel like even in the illusion of like false freedom, you can at the very least sort of sleep better at night knowing that like maybe you are in control, which may again totally be completely false and it may be just a complete like illusion, but maybe there's some psychology to it.
yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not a psychologist, so don't take this for advice. I'm not. Go see a doctor. Go see a
That
doctor if you think it's like super bad.
was kind of funny.
That'd be my
Yeah. No, there was like another point I want to bring up with these algorithms and specifically,
uh huh.
and it's more of just like how it would kind of how like even if we don't reach the pinnacle of like the perfect AI and God, the godlike AI,
Hmm.
it could still solve a lot of issues in the modern day, even if it's imperfect.
Okay, what type of issues
So
specifically?
so one issue is uh like job searching.
Job searching.
It
Okay.
is kind of like if you have a set of skills,
Hmm.
and then like a personality and like capability and talent,
Right.
the AI would be able to like measure that or quantify that in some way, and your
Oh,
ability to
okay.
grow,
Uh huh.
it'll like match that with your current circumstances to the ideal company for you to grow at. So it
Oh,
makes it easier for you and also the company.
I feel like okay. I feel like it's that could be good in a certain way, but I feel like my issue with that is that people just like, I guess you have to. That's the thing. Like, whenever you're thinking about these algorithms, you have to balance out. Like, in that scenario, like, what do you think would be like the key important factor? Like, the thing that is weighed the most. Is it like the likeness that the person has for a certain job, or is it
Hmm.
like their ability for a
Hmm.
specific job? Like, what would determine? You think what would be weighed the most?
Yeah. So I think all the things that could be weighed, like could be weighed,
Could be
but
okay.
but it's like it depends on who makes the algorithm and like how
Right.
they make it and like what they
Yeah.
want. So it's very vital that whoever makes this system is like, I don't know, hoping for the good of humanity.
That's what I mean. Because like theoretically, right, you could end up in a future where everybody is efficiently assigned to like what they're most productive in.
Yeah, exactly. But they wouldn't be the most happy.
They would be the most happy, right?
Wait,
And
but
so,
that's there's a counter argument to that saying that you're only most productive if you're happy.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So that, for example, like that could be true. Um, and then there's an idea as well that like not an idea, but it's like a thing, right? Like you may not necessarily be good at the thing that you want to be good at and that you have a passion for.
Yeah.
So, but maybe you're a great mathematician,
Yeah.
but you have an interest in drawing.
Yeah.
So how do you leverage you potentially being like one of the best mathematicians versus you kind of suck at drawing,
But you really like it.
but you really like it and you're willing to spend a lot of time on it?
Yeah.
But it's the whole thing of like the rabbit and the hare, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you're so slow at this, but you could so again, like my main problem is that we're in this job shortage right now, or not job shortage, just like there's so many different factors that make finding a job really extremely hard.
Yeah.
And so having the ability to leverage AI is really good. Um, but like there's so many things that you have to account for that it can be particular. Like we've seen LinkedIn has tried doing something similar with like recommended job searches,
Yeah.
things of that sort. But even to a degree, like how do you even measure like if there aren't enough jobs? Like who
Hmm.
gets those jobs, right? There's so
Yeah.
many like inconsistencies in there. But I definitely think it is definitely a promising idea. There's been tons of different like startups and job markets that have tried doing this, or job boards that have tried doing this, or something similar to it. Because if I like computer science, maybe that's the thing that I really want to do.
Yeah.
And that can be the gateway to me being able to do something.
Yeah.
But okay, I think somebody booked the room probably.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but okay, we can end it here for now, but we can potentially expand it more on a particular algorithms topic
Yeah.
later on. So again, this is sort of a conversation that's ingoing. We need to get more ideas, but yeah, I was thankful to have you on the podcast, and hopefully we'll get to see a lot more of you as co-host potentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Definitely. I love doing this.
and more interesting conversation, not just about algorithms, but just like very different things
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
well.
Totally down.
All right, so thank you all guys for watching, and I know this was kind of like a weird episode, but we're making do what we can for now, but we'll be back in our regular studio soon enough. So yeah, all
Yeah.
right. See you guys.
See you.